our next speaker. She's ready. She's here. Let me pin her. I haven't seen her in a while personally. Hey, Melissa, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly. Welcome. And thank you for making it. I know she was running some errands and tried to make it, and she made it. Thank you so much. And
yeah, in case I look a little flushed right now, I was maybe speeding a little bit, and I did race into my house, and everyone's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Get out of my way. I need to go to a beer." And they were like, "Well, we want beers too." So there you go.
Okay, for everybody who knows me about the joke of a beer and a beer the drink, she started it. She's the one who started it. So, there was one day in one event. Let's share this little story. There was one day in one event. She was like looking for me, and she was like, "Where is a beer?" And I need a beer. So she was like, "Oh, do you need a beer or the drink or the person?" And
Hey, I needed both. What can you say?
all right, I'm here. So yeah, let's go. So let me introduce you. Melissa Sassi, she has spent a career as both an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur. So yeah, if you're not familiar with the word intrapreneur, she's gonna explore more. She currently works at IBM, where she founded a 100-strong startup program called the IBM Hyper Protect Accelerator. She also led student experience worldwide within the IBM Z division of IBM. She is an avid speaker, hackathon judge, startup mentor, and a writer, and a great friend of mine. She is passionate about volunteerism, community development, and empowering the underserved through computer science education, entrepreneurship, financial literacy and enablement, health tech utilization, and digital inclusion. So please welcome Melissa Sassi. Welcome.
Awesome, thank you. And in the spirit of being a CEO, I founded my own youth-led nonprofit based out of Abir's home country, Tunisia, where we taught tens of thousands of young people to code in 12 countries. It's called Mentor Nations, and it has, it started as something that it was very deeply personal to me. I wanted to bring computers into my kids' classroom. My kids grew up in Tunisia, which is where their father is from. And, what started out as, computers in a classroom grew to a worldwide movement, my nonprofit. It grew to my, passion, what wakes me up in the morning. And it also grew to getting funding from the US Department of State, Google, HP, SAP, and we've been nominated for a number of different UN awards. What Abir probably doesn't know, which is really exciting, I had been building this platform within my nonprofit when we needed to pivot during COVID. And it's all about preparing for the future of work. And as we started looking at how young people were using the platform, we thought, actually, let's pluck it out of the platform. Let's change it. Let's do something completely different. And let's use it for enterprise customers. Let's use it for not just youth, but also the world, to help people prepare for the future of work and solve the skills gap. I'm the CEO and co-founder. My co-founder and CTO is also from Tunisia, Mohammed Ziad Sharif, who is with me in the United States right now. I'm in Dallas. We, as of 2 weeks ago, got our first paying customer, our first proof of concept, which I'm really excited about. And we also landed our lead investor. I'm in the middle of a $2 million raise. We'll see how it goes, but I'm cautiously optimistic. What I'm going to talk to you about today is imposter syndrome. I know you look at me and think about, wow, she's got these like 2 companies and like the UN and the World Bank and all this kind of stuff, but I didn't realize I was smart and capable and all of this stuff until a few years ago. And I know that sounds really dumb, I was working on Wall Street. I had a dream job. I created my own, job title at IBM. I created my own role at Microsoft. I'm very much both an entrepreneur, meaning someone who innovates inside of someone else's company, but I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a doctor. I've got my PhD. I focus on the digital inclusion of underserved and underrepresented communities and the tie that access, skills, and utilization of technology, what role that plays when it comes to driving outcomes like economic empowerment or technology entrepreneurship. But yeah, I used to be an imposter. I used to think I was an imposter. I used to think I was a total fraud, like everyone around me was much smarter than me. And I didn't think I deserved a seat at the table. So let's talk about that. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And just so I don't go over and I watch the time, Abir, how much time do we have?
You have 30 minutes. 30.
30. Okay, awesome.
Gotcha.
So what really got me to kind of realize what this whole imposter syndrome thing was and made me realize that, hey, I think I have this, or maybe I'm just damn insecure, who knows? Maybe too in touch with my feelings or too sensitive, who knows? But my friend Donna Sucker. Donna is an engineer and a fashionista. She has her own fashion line, so she's also a CEO. Her company is profitable. She is, she works at Microsoft. She's an engineer. She's the chief technology officer for the accessibility team at Microsoft. And I happened to hear one of her talks. She wrote a book on imposter syndrome and wrote this book called The Imposter Syndrome Vanishing Spell. Super simple book, step by step on how you can, get those feelings out of your head. And I thought, wow, that's me. And I started to follow these things. She and I started collaborating. And, I started kind of using her step-by-step formula to get those crazy thoughts out of my head. So this is not exactly what, Donna shared with me or, what I've read in a number of books. It's kind of my rendition of it, plus my own journey. Plus, I'm a reformed perfectionist. We'll talk about that too. So I have this thing where, I have this motto. I stole this from Donna too, because I just adore her. Don't worry, she allows me to. She knows. It says be an and not an or. And I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. You heard about digital skills and startups, youth empowerment. I create, I make, I do. I don't believe in these, hierarchical boundaries. I work in a lot of spheres where a lot of times I'm the only woman in the room. Sometimes, deeply technical individuals, and I don't code. I couldn't code my way out of a cardboard box, but I've had to learn, how to be technical enough without getting my skis too far out in front of me and then actually being a fraud. I have this thing that I call my Thrive Hive. Abir's part of it. And I don't know if she knows this or not, but she is. And this is this group of people that are, infectiously positive. If something's going wrong in my day, in my life, whatever, I have a group of people I can talk to about what I think, what I feel, what's going on. And I know they're going to look for, the bright shining sun, star, whatever. And, not be the negative Nancy or the negative auntie or whatever, who's going to be like, yeah, you're right. That did really suck. Granted, there's a place for constructive criticism and feedback, but there's a time where we need to hear the positive and the good. And, I think having your cheerleaders or your Thrive Hive, the people who enable you to thrive is super important. So for those of you on Twitter, you can hit me up at Mentor Africa with a K. I'm pretty easy, to find. I might be the only Dr. Melissa Sassi on the planet. So whatever, Google has going on, I'm easy to Google, I'm easy to find. And you can find me on, LinkedIn as well. So a few things, probably more than that. I want you to sit there and think a minute. And I want you to think, do you ever feel like, you look around the room, either at work or in a social environment, and you feel like, okay, all these people around me, they're using these acronyms. I have no idea what they are. Or, just all these people are smarter than me. I don't know. What am I doing here? I think sometimes when we take on a new project, a stretch assignment, a new job, a new client, sometimes we feel overwhelmed and like, wait a second, I think everybody, is smarter than me. What am I doing here? Is there a mistake? Do I really belong at this table? Or maybe even taking a few steps back and thinking, okay, wait a second, how did I get here? Did I just get here because I knew the right people, but I really don't have the skills and competencies to sit at this table? If you feel brave enough, raise your hands or use the chat window. I'm going to open up the chat to see if I can. There we go. I got it. So yeah, let me know if any of you feel like this. And by the way, it's not just a thing for women. I know a lot of times people say that, oh, women suffer from imposter syndrome. It's not the case. People just, let's say, experience it different or vocalize it differently. I think people might be a bit too shy to say, hey, I suffer. No worries. I was doing a keynote in Karachi, Pakistan in 2019. And by the way, I love Pakistan. I don't know if anybody here is from Pakistan, but in 2019, I was in Pakistan 3 times. And I learned so much about myself and other things, during that trip. But I did this keynote. There's 2,000 Pakistani entrepreneurs in the audience. Yeah, maybe a few foreigners, probably like 3 out of the 1,000 or the 2,000. Majority were men. And, they asked me to do a talk on imposter syndrome. And when I asked, does anybody, feel this way? Like, people were shy to raise their hands, and toward the end, I had a lot of people saying, okay, yeah, all right, fine. Because I think sometimes, especially, our male leaders don't want to let you know that, hey, I feel this way. Or as a strong woman, we don't often, want to show our vulnerabilities or our weaknesses, because what does that say about us? By the way, showing your vulnerabilities and your weaknesses are the things that worry you, scare you. It does not show weakness. There's a way of talking about your vulnerabilities with strength and power and assertiveness, without seeming like for lack of better words, a big weenie. All right. So I don't know about you, but throughout my career and even my educational journey, I would often work really, really hard because I felt like there was something in me that was inadequate. And I don't know if there was something broken in, my upbringing or whatever, but, I felt that way. And, sometimes when people would compliment me on like a job well done, like, oh, this is really great, you did blah, an achievement that I actually, accomplished, on my own, if you will, or with a team of people, but I played a critical role in bringing that to life. Like sometimes I'd be like, oh, well, it was, and I, would deflect from the compliment instead of just saying thank you. And I get like a little bit embarrassed, to own my knowledge, to own my skills, to own my abilities. And sometimes I felt like I was being arrogant if I did, kind of own it and talk about those experiences and those skill sets. So I think the other thing is, I don't know, but if you feel this way, but I think sometimes in the past, I would often have to feel like I needed to be validated, like even though when someone would give me a compliment, I didn't know how to accept it or take it or verbalize, it felt good, but I still felt like, I don't know what to say. But, I still needed that recognition, whether it was from like a colleague, a boss, a friend, I still like thrived off of it. I needed it, even though I didn't know how to, verbalize it properly and felt shy or embarrassed or needed to deflect. I again don't know about you, but I've got a high EQ. I am in touch with my emotions and my feelings. Granted, everybody's emotions get the best of them sometimes, but I also have this ability to kind of read the emotions in others. Maybe you do as well. Where you can have crucial conversations and enable others to feel valued, to empathize with them, to feel connected, to them. And part of that being what you desire for someone to be to you, or what, how you want to feel. I think this plays an important role, as well. So I think, a lot of these things are interconnected, that inner bully in your head, or how you want others to behave with you, how you want others to, talk to you, if you will, feel about you, how you want them to, empathize with you, how you empathize with them. So either way, if nobody's told you this before, and I hope they have many times, you're not succeeding by accident. The things you did, you achieved those things, you should be proud of those things. and own those things and not be afraid to write about those things, to speak about those things, whether that's at an event, at a meetup, whether it's in a blog, whether it's a silly social media post. Your personal brand is really important. We'll talk about that in a second, because that's one of the ways that I found that I overcame my imposter syndrome, is verbalizing certain things. And again, you belong, whether you feel like you belong or not. I know there are always times where all of us feel like, wow, I don't belong in this group, or I don't, this is not my thing. But ultimately, whatever that achievement was, you achieved it. You should own it, be proud of it, loud and proud. And yes, that was you. It's normal to feel like that. It's normal to have that, inner bully sitting inside of your head or on your shoulder. Some of you might still be shaking your head like, oh, hey, that's not me. Our worst bully, our worst critic is sitting right inside of our head. And typically what it's saying is not rational at all. And it's the way that your, inner voice talks to you is never how you would talk to a friend, possibly even your enemy. Maybe some people are, not so great, but for the most part, most of us, excuse me, are not talking, to others in such a fashion. So one of the things that I think about when I hear that voice, like, oh, you're going to mess this up, or wow, that whatever you did, it wasn't perfect. This is why I also said that I'm a reformed perfectionist, because I realized that I was constantly striving for the best. And if I didn't get the best, I felt like I failed. Instead of realizing that sometimes good is good enough. And that if you constantly strive for perfection, and if you feel let down or feel like you failed every single time you weren't perfect, you're always setting yourself up for failure. But remember, and we'll talk about this too, that failure is not really, and I know many people say this a lot, as long as you learn something, it's not really a failure. You've gotten something out of it. I failed a million times. I fail almost every day. But at least I don't set myself up with unrealistic expectations, or I try not to, because I recognize that, and you should too, that it's really not healthy, for you or others around you. Nobody, is perfect all the time. You may, like, I don't know, knock something out of the park one day. But other times, you may not resonate with someone, or you may just like say the wrong words. I've done that before. We've all done that before. Either way, what you feel is normal. This is Susan Betts. Susan used to be the head of brand strategy at Microsoft. She is now the head of brand strategy at Google. And she was sitting down with me one day when we were talking about what the heck I wanted to do with my career next. And this was quite a few years ago. And she's like, what you feel is normal. Like, I feel this. Everybody feels. I'm like, what are you talking about, Susan? Like, you're amazing. You're the best storyteller. You're like, I aspire to be you. The way you talk about things, the way you connect things together, the way you tell stories, the way everyone just holds on to what you say and emotionally connects to it and feels compelled to act. Like you're like a queen. She's like, what you feel is normal. I have it too. I just, compartmentalize it and, don't let it overcome me, because I sit back and say, is what I feel rational? And again, we're going to talk about some strategies in a second. This is my GM, my general manager at IBM. He's my mentor, and he's a really strong supporter of not only women in tech, but just, my career. At IBM, I'm something that's called a wild duck. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. I think it's an IBMism, but essentially what it is someone who colors outside of the lines, beats to their own drum, and kind of has their own career path. And that's really not a common thing at IBM. You have defined career paths. You're an engineer, and you go from here to here to here. And your aspiration is to be a master inventor with a bunch of patents, and you're creating awesome tech. And then, a distinguished engineer, that's like the top of your thing. Or you're a PM, or you're a programmer, or whatever you are. You've got these defined career paths, and there's X number of them. I don't fit in any of them. And one day he sat me down, he's like, all right, Melissa, I've never worked with anybody like you at IBM before. And I want you to know that I know that you don't fit into any of our, career journeys. And I want you to know that I'm willing to create a career journey for you. What do you want to do? I'm like, I love the startup program that I founded and that I'm running. It's awesome. And by the way, one of the sexy startups that I get to work with is Timbaland. I don't know if you all know Timbaland. He's a 5-time Grammy Award-winning music producer, works with Madonna, Jay-Z, Alicia Keys. He created a startup and I'm on his advisory board called Beat Club. And it's all about democratizing access to the music industry. I had him on my live stream, him and his manager and his crew. And so I get to work with celebrities. I get to work with really cool, innovative tech that's, changing healthcare, changing financial services, but I still felt like an imposter. And he said to me, Melissa, like all the things that you're working on, you're so outside in, meaning you think outside in. You're like, you sometimes make people uncomfortable. And I want you to keep doing that. I don't want you to stop. And by the way, the next time you feel like an imposter, come to me and I will kick your ass. I didn't put that on my chart because I thought Abir might get mad at me. But that's really what he said. He said, because it's bullshit. Sorry for the colorful words, but anyway, he has always been very helpful to me. And I think it's very important to think about who are your sponsors, who remind you, who are people in your Thrive Hive that remind you, people you look up to, people you admire, that can remind you when you're being a big dum-dum. Lots of famous people, different ethnicities, different countries all over the world. Seth Godin, lots of different people feel like they're imposters. We don't see like Sheryl Sandberg as an imposter, right? But she stood up at a conference. She's like, what am I doing at this tech conference for like female engineers? I don't code. I'm an operations person. I feel like an imposter. I'm not the one creating tech. Seth often feels like, are people going to find out that I'm a hack? I don't really know anything about marketing and communications. He's like a god. And, a famous actress, crazy town. Neil Armstrong, he says he suffers from imposter syndrome too. He was at this Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel Prize party. And he looks around, he's like, what the heck am I doing here? I'm an astronaut. I just went where I was told. Crazy town, right? So again, lots of people who are very accomplished feel like this. Tom Hanks, 70% of people suffer from imposter syndrome at, points in their lives. We might not have that feeling all the time, but, it's there. So, take care. Are you a higher achiever? Do you work a lot to overcome some of this stuff, these feelings? Like, I gotta keep showing up. I gotta keep showing up. I gotta do the thing. For me, if I'm not productive, I don't feel like I'm of value to myself, to others around me. And so I rarely sit down and relax. My friends, my family, my partner, they all recognize that I'm a maniac. I don't know how to do it. And I'm trying to get better because I know it's a problem. I always feel like I gotta be the best, but I always, I know if I don't, that I'm learning to accept that sometimes good is good enough. I am competitive to a certain extent, but I'm not so competitive where I want to bring others down. I like to bring others up. Never downplay your, achievements. Some of, all this stuff, it impacts our daily lives. And it was first coined in 1978. It first became a thing. So, all right, this was me. Let's talk about what we can do. Because by the way, if you mess up, it's going to mess up your salary, your career growth, and your promotability. All right. By the way, I was called an imposter recently. That person didn't know what they were talking about. Let me skip through that. All right. So first off, I like to go way back. Think about my origin story. Cool. 10 minutes, Abir, is that right? Super. I like to think about my origin story. Where did this stuff come from? Is there something with my family or my, something that I experienced way back when that, made me feel a certain way? I had a challenging upbringing like many of us. And, I've learned to forgive some of those scenarios and some of those people. However, certain things shape us. And, ultimately, when we go way back when, we may know where that comes from. We may not know, and that's okay. But think about, are there certain things in your life that's happened that, brought about that feeling inside of you? Next thing is to think about what triggers you. All right. So for me, if I'm in a deeply technical conversation where people are talking like way over my head, and I can hold my own, with a bunch of engineers, a bunch of developers. I manage developers, I manage engineers. I can do that and very effectively. But when we get too deep, roll up your sleeves, I don't know what's going on. That will trigger me like, oh God, what am I doing here? Should I be managing these people? Sometimes I get really bored when I look at the details of what people want to share with me, because I'm a big picture, blue sky kind of person with big ideas. And sometimes when people want to, pull the covers off and say all the little steps of how you get somewhere, oh, can't do it. Feel like an imposter then too, like, oh, why can't I focus? Why can't I pay attention like everyone else? I have ADHD, so that makes it even worse. I can barely sit down and, focus in certain situations if it's not something I like or enjoy or want to do. It's hard for me. So think about, are there certain people? If I know that someone is not being transparent and honest, or they're not themselves, they've got a wall up, that bothers me too. And sometimes I feel like, oh, should I be that way? Should I be more guarded? Oh gosh, I curse, I'm open, I tell everybody everything. Should I not be like that? Are there certain themes that make your imposter syndrome come up? But ultimately, I think you need to, recognize that, hey, this thing is there and I'm going to change this thing. And by the way, that distorted narrative, that perception we have of ourselves, it's not real. I'm not going to minimize my achievements. I'm going to accept them as truths. Hey, Melissa, you're smart. Hey, you achieved that thing. Hey, you're a CEO. Hey, you're a founder. Hey, you changed this, that, and the other. Own it. Accept our abilities and our possibilities. Not be afraid to say when something makes you vulnerable or weak. We don't need to be silent about our disabilities, our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities. Own them as truths. It's okay. We're not going to be good at everything, but really think about what your superpowers are and again, own them. Not only own them, but embrace them. And, again, recognize when you're being negative, combat that negative with positive, and commit to saying things like, is it fair for me to compare my chapter 5 with somebody else's chapter 25? All right, 5 minutes, we're getting there. Take time for yourself, sit back and relax. You're not always going to, get it right. Sometimes we need self-care and mindfulness. Write down how you're going to take care of you. Don't set yourself up for failure. Give yourself credit. Accept failure. Accept that as a growth opportunity. Take on little experiments. Dive into those things that make you uncomfortable or vulnerable. Hold yourself accountable for taking on a stretch assignment. Not being afraid to take on new things and not feel like you're not good enough or not smart enough. But most importantly, share your successes loud and proud, whether that's a blog on, through your personal brand, because by the way, your personal brand matters, as you've heard today. You are a brand. By the way, I got my job at IBM because of my brand. I often get invited to speak at the UN and the World Bank, all kinds of places. I fly all over the world. I've been to 55 countries. Sometimes I have thousands of people listening to my talks. And, I don't pay for those out of my pocket. Either comes from IBM or a speaker fee. Build your community. Think about who your Thrive Hive is. Who are those infectiously positive people who sponsor you, mentor you? Don't forget, you got to give forward, you got to give back. Let the authentic you shine. Don't try to be someone else. Be yourself. Think about what advice you would give to a friend and actually do that. How many times do we think about, oh, you know what? If a beer were to ask me for advice, I know I would tell her blah, blah, and blah. And then it happens to me and I do the opposite of that. How many times do we do that? We do that all the time. So remember, write it down. What would you tell a friend to do? And what would you do if that friend did the opposite? So as Donna Sucker says, no matter what you do, go out and do the thing, whatever that thing is. Say that I got this. Say that I believe it. And then do it. Whatever that thing is, go out and do the thing. So as I said, I'm a CEO and founder. I'm a speaker, I'm a writer. I'm a tech exec. You know, I play in a lot of sandboxes. I give guest lectures, you know, all kinds of cool stuff. So I'm not an imposter, not anymore anyway. If you want to read more, you can check out Donna's book, The Imposter Syndrome Banishing Spell. You can find it on Amazon or all over the place, and hopefully you can, you know, find some of this material. I'll, you know, put in my Twitter handle, you know, into the chat window, should anyone miss anything and want to reach out and get more. So here is my Twitter handle, and I'm going to type it in right now. So you got it. I think I am. Yeah, there we go. Hopefully it comes through right. There you go. I will also put in my LinkedIn. Hopefully I typed those right.
Yes, it's correct.
All right, awesome. So thank you. And, you know, as it says, you know, keep rocking, keep doing your thing, whatever your thing is.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, keep doing your thing. And I see a hand raised. Nichelle, I'm sure she was engaging in the chat. She was loving it, and I'm sure everybody was loving it. So I think she has a question. So go ahead, Nishi.
I'm not going to be long, but because I've struggled with this for so long, it's like everything you said resonated with me so much. I'm like, where were you all my life?
I thought this about Donna too. When Donna started talking about this, I was like, Donna is like a goddess. Like, how did she know everything I'm feeling? And by the way, I've got a copy of this presentation online. I'm going to just grab it for y'all. It might not be exactly the same, but it's a similar version.
Yes, so I wanted to quickly ask, do you find that imposter syndrome is more common in women? And also, do you think social media has an impact on it?
You know, I think that, you know, women are often, you know, it's acceptable for you to cry. It's acceptable as a kid, you know, it's acceptable for you to show your vulnerabilities because you're a girl, you know, whereas boys are taught to be, you can't cry. You got to be rough and tough, and you gotta go out and be a boy, you know? So I think, you know, these kind of things play one role. I think the other role is, and I think this impacts both women and men, girls and boys, you know, or anyone who might be, you know, non-binary, whatever your gender identity is. You know, there are these expectations of, you know, how thin you're supposed to be, what your nose is supposed to look like.
Right.
What your skin color is supposed to look like. You know, as a white person, am I dark enough? As a Black person, are you light enough? You know, we have all these things that we hear all the time, and they're often things that our parents say to us. You know, whether your hair is curly or straight, whether you are natural or not, you know, whatever. And I think that plays a role in, you know, kind of setting up these false expectations of perfection. And if you're not perfect, you know, you're always failing. And so I think there are often these unrealistic expectations that people have for us, regardless of what our background is, where we come from. You know, some have it worse than others. And ultimately, I think we all have our different ways of manifesting it. Women are often more verbal about it because, again, it goes back to that sharing the vulnerability thing, versus men who kind of try to play it off in a different way and may not be as in touch, you know, with verbalizing their feelings and their weaknesses as women might be, even if they feel it inside or don't know what they're feeling inside.
Yeah, I'm gonna go real quick for Nina, and let's take 1 minute to answer her question.
Hi, thank you so much. I love this topic of imposter syndrome. It's one of my favorite topics. I just have a question. You brushed on it briefly. Do you feel that maybe imposter syndrome is more, it's not really imposter syndrome, but it's more maybe misogyny that sometimes women deal with?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like I used to be the only woman at the table, and I was constantly being undermined. And so I thought it was imposter syndrome until I realized that no, it's not
Yeah.
It's kind of like reverse imposter syndrome. It's like they had imposter syndrome of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think those things do happen. They are real. And I've experienced it myself, you know, where I didn't realize that, hey, wait a second, like this is happening to me because I'm a woman, I'm a girl. And I've always been really strong and always had, you know, friends who were guys, could always hold my own, you know, never looked across the table and felt like, oh gosh, I'm the only woman in the room. I didn't actually realize that I was the only woman in the room until like people started talking about, you know, women in this, you know, capacity or that capacity. And the more I thought about it, I was like, oh shoot, you know, I am the only woman in the room. And I know, you know, I go back to one instance in my career where my former boss, you know, quite a few jobs ago, and I was very junior in my career, first time, you know, manager, sent me a text over the weekend, said, I want to talk to you on Monday. I thought I'm either getting promoted or fired or something's going on because he was my boss's boss. I go in Monday, pulls me into a room and he said, so we're going to date and you're getting promoted. What? Not like, and I never like thought I'd given him any indication that I was interested. I'm sure I didn't. I wasn't interested. And I thanked him. I found a way to maneuver around it. I didn't get promoted. The two things were tied together. You know, what did I feel then? Would that have come to me if I wasn't a woman? You know, so I think there are lots of different things that we face in our, you know, careers and our journeys where we may feel like I'm an imposter or, wow, is this misogyny? Am I being treated unfairly because I'm a woman? And it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. And I know I didn't touch on it. Sorry, Abir, I'll say one more thing, then I'll stop. I know I didn't touch on the misogyny aspect of things, but it's real. It's damn real. And it happens. I've seen it, I've felt it, but I don't often, I'm not often able to articulate the difference between when it's real or when it's really me. And that's hard. It's a hard position to be in for a female leader.
All right.
Closed an article about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nina, for the question. And I'm sure it's a conversation we can carry and we can have other occasion and to tackle this this topic, imposter syndrome. Thank you, Melissa, for coming in and sharing your story and being vulnerable with us. That's very important. It's a safe space for everybody to share and all that. And I know we're running a little bit behind schedule.